or indeed the imperative is for this sector to be one which is associated with being open and creative and dynamic? And if so, what do you think are the major barriers? Is it the competitive structure of the sector? Is it the culture of the sector? What is it that stands in the way of this sector not seeing the things as that you've described as kind of external interventions and interruptions, but actually something which turns the sector and the whole character of the sector itself?
Two parts of that question. Firstly, absolutely this industry needs to become open and outward looking. We are an essential part of society. I think you made that point. Key driver of economic activity and a key issue in all the communities that we serve. But actually our license to operate depends upon being open and accessible to our customers, because ultimately they will disrupt us if we don't. We have to be, otherwise we will cease to be relevant. Why aren't we? And I don't believe we are. I think it is largely cultural. For 60 years in the industrial era, the mantra of our sector was keep the lights on. That meant that our industry was run by engineers and accountants. I would suspect that those two professions form the majority of people in this room. Engineers and accountants are great at linear thinking, and they're great at closed system thinking. Disruptive change needs the opposite. Disruptive implies exponential change gaps, and it requires non-linear thinking, and it requires seeking information and partnership and collaboration from people who are not the same as you. So culturally, I think the utility industry has got a real big challenge. And there's probably a third of the people in the room who are here because they get it, and that's why they're here, and they're looking to build networks and collaborations. I'm not talking to you third, I'm talking to the other 2/3 who don't yet get it, the engineers and the accountants in the room. Now I can say that as an accountant. So we have got a real cultural challenge, and I think that's the biggest single obstacle. As you said in your talk, we do like to blame politicians and policy, but as you also said, is they don't know what to do. And I think at the moment the utility industry hides behind the excuse of the policy framework isn't right, rather than getting on and engaging with their customers and their communities and their own staff.
So, final question. People often forget, or don't even know, the origins of the whole personal technology movement, which was before the invention of the modern PC and all of that. A group of technologists got together in London, in California, and they said, when computers were massive mainframes owned by corporations, they said, and they were quite revolutionary, quite idealistic, we need to make this stuff available to citizens. We need to use this stuff to change people's lives rather than computing big something which is just held by kind of technical experts in mainframes and big organizations. So there was a kind of computers for people movement which predated actually some of the innovations that we associate with the moment of takeoff in terms of personal technology. Do you think that, and what's interesting then is that what happens then is that the people who are making the stuff are themselves connected to that community of geeks who use the stuff, who love the stuff. And actually they then develop. The industry is then led by people who love playing with this stuff themselves. They're not technocrats, they are fundamentally enthusiasts. Now, the thing that hits me, and I'm sure there are lots of people out in the room who are involved in microgeneration and community initiatives and things like that, energy efficiency projects, but I go sometimes to conferences of people who are in that sector, and they look a bit different to you. You know, they don't wear suits on the whole, they're a bit kind of rough, but they're incredibly enthusiastic. They love it, you know, they love the stuff they're trying to innovate with, they love the community engagement, they're quite radical in their perspective. do you think that possibly what needs to happen is we need to close that cultural divide, and that the engineers and the accountants and the people in big companies need to spend a bit more time with the people who are trying to put together a micro scheme, who are trying to think about how their community can save money by improving energy? Get together with that enthusiasm at the ground floor and see what comes out of that kind of mashup.
I think if I sort of turn back to the leaders of the utility industry, I think there are two things that leaders in the utility need to do. That is one, get out there and connect with not the usual suspects. Connect with the two-man startup in a shed. Connect with the community group trying to get their project off the ground. Connect with the mutual energy company that's trying to put together a procurement for their village. Get out there and connect and find out and feel the passion. That's the first thing that leaders need to do. The second thing that leaders need to do is give themselves time and material to think, to challenge themselves. Now, how you do that, maybe some of you are doing it by attending this conference. I do it by reading. And that's how I challenge myself. So certainly if you read something like Rifkin's book, The Third Industrial Revolution, challenges you. Don't agree with everything in the book, but it makes you think. I'm currently reading Obliquity by John Kay about how we make decisions, and the direct approach isn't always right. I've made a note of the title of that book that you've given that I will read. Challenge yourself, make yourself think. So feel the passion and make yourself think, and you will come up with surprising answers. Because the sad thing is, if you don't, you will not be a leader of the utility sector for very long, because I think there'll be a new leader or a new sector. So, on that chilling note, thank you, Matthew, for both speaking and sharing a little bit. What we're going to do now is, I think, says he, checking his programme, is, if you like, myself and Matthew have had a bit of a fireside chat. We're now going to hand over to two other people who are going to do their own fireside chat. Tony Fidel of Nest is going to get his own back from my swipe at them, in conversation with Adam Malak, who's going to converse with him, and I'm going to have a few minutes quiet in the front row, and I will join you for the next session. But Matthew now has to leave us, so please join me in thanking Matthew.